Welcome to Just In Case. Case UK's podcast, where we choose to help build lives, not patients. So, welcome to Just In Case, Case UK's podcast. I'm your host today, Chrissie Evans. So last month we spoke with Andrew Jenkins about coping with PTSD. I really hope you enjoyed that session. I know that it was really fun to record. So today we're here with Byron Hayward and John Williams. We're going to be discussing happiness. John, Byron, would you please introduce yourselves?
So I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Case UK. From a professional point of view, from a personal friendship point of view, me and Byron go back a long way. So there's been plenty of moments when we've had lots and lots of good laughs. But then working with Victor for this long, I'll expand on that a bit later, but working with Victor for this long, I have to have a right sense of humour.
I'm Byron and I'm a Wellbeing business consultant for Case UK for coming up just under a year now. As John said, we've known each other a long time and really enjoying my experience here. Totally different vocation in life for me from what I've done for the last 30 years, but thoroughly enjoying my journey in this organisation at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you both. So thank you Byron, aka Victor, and thank you John. So we're definitely going to hear a little bit more about that in a bit, so that will be really interesting, quite intriguing. You have a lot of history together. As John said, you've known each other for a really long time. Can you tell us a bit more about that? You know, you've played rugby together, you work together. Tell us a little bit more about your history together.
Yes, crikey, I think I was playing for that lady when I had a time, and he was about 19 when he was playing for that lady, when we first played in the same team. And then we worked together for the Welsh Rugby initially. We became very good friends. Then we coached together at Vale RFC, and then we got sacked together because we both were not so good a job. At least the employer didn't think so. And now we're working together again, which is quite refreshing and quite enlightening actually. So the journey, and throughout all that time, we've remained very good friends.
So you've both, like you say, got a lot of history together. You've both got very interesting work histories as well. I think it'd be really good. So Byron, tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you know John, and a bit about your history.
Yeah, obviously the rugby was the initial breaker, I guess, when me and John met. But then my history is I spent the vast majority of my working life over the last 25 to 28 years in professional sport. So I've been as a rugby player initially, but then moving into the coaching role of initially first with John and the Dragons, where we were employed with the WRU. We were the Dragons Academy. I was a conditioning coach. John was the academy manager. Then I went on to coach Sale, went to Manchester for a couple of years, came back and coached from the regions and ended up coaching the national team for a short period of time. And then just really 12 months ago, actually, I wasn't happy with my life. I wasn't happy with where I was working and I needed to make a change. And this opportunity came up via John. Just by chance and coincidence and timing, I thought, right, let's go, give it a go, and that's why I'm here now, doing something totally different. I think it's good to get out of your comfort zone now and again, get the adrenaline flowing, but and I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying the people I work with and the organisation and the job I'm doing.
Brilliant. Well, I know Case UK are really happy to have you on the team. What I really want to know, why do they call you Victor?
It's a character, I guess, for a lot of people, especially younger people, won't have a clue who Victor Meldrew was. But it was a TV programme called One Foot in the Grave, where basically Victor Meldrew was a grumpy old man. I don't know why they call me that. Nobody ever calls me that. And it's obviously very subjective to John. So you have to ask him to elaborate on that, and then maybe define what grumpy is.
Interesting point. So John, over to you.
Yes. Byron was always at the top of his game. Maybe this is linked to the environment of professional sport, but was always at the top of his game as an athlete. Always wanted excellence in whatever he done. And when things didn't go well, he didn't mind showing the fact that it wasn't going very well. And he would stop and grump. I think his name came from the fact that he would always be his head down, grumping about something didn't go as well as he had expected. And I think in that moment, I think you looked for the lighter side. His nickname stuck from those moments.
What was the journey like for you from Mr. Grumpy to feeling how you feel now?
I think that's an accurate description of what John said there. It did, looking now, you obviously look at it in the wrong place for happiness when I was younger. And it was, unless I had perfection and everything, because I was so driven, particularly in sport. You know, initially before I went professional rugby player, I was a plasterer, that was my trade, building plasterer. It was exactly the same in that as well. It was like, you're just craving all the time for perfection. Well, I can tell you now, anyone listening, that it's impossible to get. And you just keep chasing it and chasing it. And if I use the example of, I guess, from the time I was 6, like most young men in Wales, I wanted to play rugby for my country. And I achieved it when I was 29. And all that time, probably from my early teens, so the best part of 20 years, I was chasing something external that was my driver in life. And that's what made me Victor Meldrew. Because I kicked 7 kicks out of 8. I kicked 8, it was never ever happy. And contentment, because I got to 29, achieved my dreams, played for my country in Wales. And don't get me wrong, at the time it was amazing, it was fantastic. But I bet it lasted a week. That feeling lasted a week. And I chased it nearly all my life. So my journey from being grumpy or not happy to being in a place where, yeah, I'm happy and content now, no doubt about it. I was looking in the wrong place. Happiness coming in, but it's from inside. It's not from the external things of the world. And that's what I found.
Do you think that, it's interesting, do you think professional sports still has that, creates that environment where it doesn't allow for mistakes or for human error, for difference, if you like, for difference in terms of mentality and approach? It's almost regimented, so that almost creates its own mental health issues.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the pressure comes from ego.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
We're all in it. I was in it. I was the same. So I'm not, disrespecting anyone who's in that profession now, because everything's driven by ego. Like, you gotta win. It's all about machoism, and it's like failure is not an option. It's all rubbish. You have to fail. You're gonna fail. There's no acceptance of it. It's totally unrealistic to the expectations of what's going to happen in life, in a business world, in a sporting world. Failure is happening. It's going to happen. We find it so hard to deal with it in a sport, in professional sport, and contextualise it in. At the end of the day, all it is really is just a game, mind. Okay, you want to win as much as you can, but it's not life and death. It's just a game, whether you're getting paid for it or not. And that's the perspective. And coaches today, I know I didn't, we need to release that pressure from players, because the expectation on the players going on the field is already, you've got the TV, you've got supporters, crowd, and then what we do as coaches and organisations is heap more pressure on top of the players to go on top of what they're going to put up with. That doesn't lend itself to good mental health, well-being, long-term sustainable success either.
Do you think, and it's a really interesting point, do you really think that work environments have learned those lessons? Because in some work environments you come away and I think it helps you thrive and grow, and it's exactly the same in the sporting environment. And if the right work environment is created, you grow and thrive. And I think this is exactly the same in the sporting world. And I think that the environment that's created has a bearing on your overall productivity and growth.
Without doubt, the environment, in my experience, when I've had success and when we haven't been successful, every time I've been in any sporting team we've achieved, it's been down to the environment. The environment is everything.
I think environment, culture, it all plays a really big part, doesn't it?
Yes.
And I think that when it comes to that high pressurised environment, the question is it something that's maintainable? Because can we maintain that high pressure environment and it still be something that leads to success in the long term?
Yeah, it's almost like Byron just saying just now about his kicking the 8th goal, kicking 7 number 1 and 8. It's almost like creating, so he created his own pressure point. And how do we create it in work as well, in the work environment? We create it by deadlines. We're putting deadlines in place. They are artificial constructs that we put in place as leaders. And we all should decide as a team that's for us to produce something meaningful and professional. We create our own deadlines that adds value. So it's a construct that leadership put in place, and they create their own pressure. And I think if you take some of those constructs away, I think it can be a really productive place to work.
When it comes to the things that we put in place, the measures, the boundaries, what we choose to put in place as something that we want to achieve, through all of my working career, we've talked about it as this stairway to heaven. Yeah. So you get the next step and then you'll get to where you want to be. But as soon as you get to the next step, you realise there's another step and another step. And when you get to the top of what you might think is the top of the ladder, you realise that there are more steps again. Yeah. So we never quite feel that sense of contentment when we get to where we want to be. And I think that when we take away the ladder and we stop and enjoy the things that we achieve, the things that we do, it completely changes the narrative. Yeah. So, happiness is obviously different for everyone. How do we measure it when we're going through the good and the bad times?
I think they invariably come, irrespective of your journey or where your journey is in life, or whether they're things that affect your life. I think we will perceive them as good and bad things. It's how we feel inside about ourselves. We can be going through a tough time because they will come, but how do we feel about ourselves? How do we feel that we can manage that? And so that's that contentment inside, that overall we're in a good place from a personal level, because the other factors are going to happen. Well, you're going to have a bad day at work, things aren't going to go so well as you expected, something's going to happen in the family. There's lots of things that are happening in your life, but it's how do we feel inside? Where are we at from a personal perspective?
And I think that's a really good point, and I think that happiness does come from within. I think Byron said earlier as well about happiness coming from within. And I think that sometimes if we're struggling, it's really important for us to look at where we can go and get that support. And if you go on to the Case UK website, then you can have a look at some of the things that we can offer to help provide that support if you are struggling in work. And John, as you said, we can struggle in work, we can have bad days, so it's important to go and get that support. Check out the website at www.case-uk.co.uk if you want to have a look at some of the services on offer.
That is the question, because some of it can say very grey and very vague, but I think, if you think about us as human beings, so your first memory as a child, for all of us, were you unhappy? Like sitting in your garden, maybe on a swing or on the grass. You know, toddlers, you see children, grandchildren, and they're sitting there. I know I've got a 1-year-old grandchild, and he sits there, unless he wants feeding or changing, he's happy. So innately, our innate state as human beings is happiness. Why did I become grumpy and unhappy? Because I got conditioned by the world, rugby, nobody's fault, my own fault. I decided to be that driven, but the outside world will condition us. So for me, now, when I think, because this is what our minds do to us, is for me, happiness is the absence of unhappiness. If life is good and you're content, your family are well and healthy, you're happy. But like it or not, we all got a voice in our head that will tell us something's wrong. You should be happier, or you'll be happier when you get a promotion, pay your mortgage off, retire, whatever it may be. It's nonsense. For me, that's how I simply define happiness.
Yeah, the Dalai Lama says in his quote that human beings are designed to be happy, and you're spot on when you go back to the way that we our formative years. There's not an unhappy moment you can recollect really, unless you suffer trauma or what, and other external factors. But from a personal point of view, you can't take your memory back that far to the formative years where you were unhappy.
Because again, it's this striving for something that when we've achieved it, we start to tell ourselves that it's not achievable because now we need to go on to the next step, and it's constantly chasing that next step and never actually stopping and enjoying being in the moment. So could you tell me what helps you personally with your happiness, and what do you think other people might take from what you feel would be something that is helpful in relation to happiness?
For me, probably now it's being selfish. I call it maybe self-care. When I spoke with Sandy a couple of weeks ago on self-care, that was really good. Because if you don't, how are you going to be? How am I going to be a good father, good husband, good grandfather if I'm in a bad place, if I'm down? So unless I take care of myself, so I've certainly done this the last few years, probably over the last 10 years, is prioritise what do I enjoy doing? What's going to make me a good dad, a good husband, a good granddad, etc. And to be able to perform work. So for me, it's about, I like regular exercise. I feel a lot better. I've never drunk massive amounts of alcohol, big amounts, but I drink very, very little alcohol now. Decent food, water, the pillars that go with well-being, really. But it does work. It's not a cliche, it's not a fad. For people who haven't tried it, try it. It works. It does work. It's worked for me. Spending time with my family is very, very important for me now, the people I love. I spent basically the best part of 30 years travelling a lot with the job, being away lots from home. Priorities change as you get a little bit older in life, and that's what's important to me now. And when I get those things in place, I've got a holistic happiness. I'm happy in work, I'm happy when I'm home, I'm happy with basically everywhere I go. I heard somebody say at a meeting the other day about what we say is, it's okay not to be okay, which is right, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. And there's so much that we can do to ourselves. As John touched on earlier, there's some things we can't escape in life. We can't escape grief. We're all going to suffer grief, loss, illness. It's just part of our journey through this life. But there's so much we can do to make ourselves happier, and it's not okay not to pay attention to it. So we can't just keep doing statements out there. It's okay not to be okay. No, well come on, we've got to do something about it.
I agree.
I agree completely. I think that it is okay to not be okay, but it is really important how we act on that. I think one of the key points here as well is about acceptance, and acceptance of the things that we can change, acceptance of the things that we can't, and accepting that we are allowed to be happy. And I think that we spend a lot of time telling ourselves that we're not quite meeting where we should be, we're not quite good enough, when actually we are good enough, and it is okay to be happy. And I think that is one of the key points.
And I think for everybody it will be different, and those factors will be different depending on the other factors. So from a personal point of view, being Chief Operating Officer is very busy. It's a very busy role. So I get a lot of happiness through solitude, through practicing solitude, not for long periods of time, but for 10 minutes on my own or 15 minutes on my own at the beginning of a day, end of a day. You can almost download your thinking, put yourself in a good place. So you start in that position is a positive position starting off. And I think I get lots out of that from a personal level. I think that seeing people thrive is also a great contentment, but it's an external factor, but it still gives me internal happiness. So and I think that, like Byron, family, as you become more aware, as you get older, more self-aware, the most enjoyable days of my life are the ones that spent with family in meaningful discussion and in good environments, because I think that you don't really appreciate that until you get a bit older and a bit wiser about that type of things that work for you.
Do you think professional sport and the culture has had a bearing on how you felt day to day or week to week?
Yeah, I did, without a doubt. Basically, in simple terms, if you win, you're happy. If you lose, you're unhappy. Which is, when you think about it, it's crazy. And you wonder why so many professional sportsmen end their careers and virtually everyone's suffering with some kind of mental health issue. The ones who would admit to it. Because if you think about you living your life like that for 10 to 15 years, so one minute you're on top of the clouds, next week you're back in the depths of despair. And that's the cycle every week, because you play from September till the end of April, May.
And all that, just after that, all the language around it. So in a good week, everybody's high-fiving, fist pumping. In a bad week, you're at the bottom of the trough. And all the language around it is all negative as well. So you can imagine going through that journey, and the next time you got to put it right, or next opportunity you have to put it right, is next Saturday. Because you've got to go from this Saturday to next Saturday with those negative vibes coming out from a loss.
From a self-care perspective, what do people do, or what can we suggest that people do between that Saturday to Saturday?
Let's go back to environment again, isn't it? I think it's coaches taking expectation, really realistic with expectations, because it's impossible to win every week. I mean, I did have a stage about 4 or 5 years ago when I was coaching the Scarlets. We won 18. It's only ever happened to me in my playing and coaching career, so basically 25 years so. But we won 18 games, unbeaten. So we kept winning every week. I didn't know how to handle it. It was crazy, because it was constantly. But then that weighs off after a while, and you start getting bored. The expectation is now, well, we're going to win anyway. So it's like that. Like the euphoria of when you win that big game and you get into playoffs and you get into European semi-finals and things. Because you constantly win, and even that weighs off, then it becomes like, oh, it's just a norm. It's the external things. It's just that I think expectation, perspective is everything in these environments for young athletes. And the coaches who can make the player realise and feel that are the best coaches around. Not the ones who know about all the technical and tactical, the ones with the big egos and makes it all about them. I was like that to a degree. I mean, people who judge my coaching career, my last coaching stint I finished a year ago now, coaching Wales in the 20s. We didn't win a single game in the Six Nations. 5 or 6 years before that.
Oh, you was grumpy then, mate.
No, well,
Yes.
not because we lost the games. 5 or 6 years earlier, right, I coached the Scarlets and we won the league. I was the semi-final Europe. Was I a better coach last year, coaching the 20s, or was it then? Now, the outside world will tell you I was a better coach in the Scarlets. Rubbish. I was a way better coach 12 months ago. I have more empathy for players, taking pressure away from them so they could go and express themselves, be the best version of themselves. I was a way better coach, but the external sporting world will tell you I was rubbish because we didn't win a game.
When it comes to coaching and the environment that you've created in coaching, what would you say are your key achievements? So with the Scarlets up until last year, what would you say are the things that you're most proud of in relation to coaching?
The thing I'm most proud of, and I'll probably never get to endure any of this, is that if someone asks the player I coached, how did Byron make you feel? And if they say they felt that I genuinely cared about them, not their rugby, how they performed just on the field, but I genuinely cared about them, because I believe probably in the last 10 years that was more important to me than the rugby matches, and that would make me happy. I'd be content with that.
That's really ironic, really, because we both, by Brian and I, as we mentioned earlier, both worked for the Welsh Rugby Union and the academy setup. The academy was about taking young players who had potential to be a professional onto a journey to realise their own dreams. And whenever I go into those environments, or you, or even Wayne was the other guy that we worked with, those men now still, they rush as if we are, and they want to chat about those days, because they were, for them, they were really fond memories of there was a hard, tough, challenging environment, but they were part of the challenge for themselves. It wasn't our challenge, it was their challenge that they created for themselves. The fun they had and the laughs they had was all about that journey, and they thoroughly enjoyed the environment, as tough and challenging as it was. And there were some real notable kids that went on and played professional rugby without naming names. There's no need to. But this was about the environment that they remembered and cherished. And you could talk to them, and the first thing they said, "Oh, do you remember that run we used to do? Or do you remember those ice baths in front of the office?" because the things that we done were fun. They were tough for those kids at that time, but they were actually enjoyable because they were part of the challenge, and it was their challenge, not our challenge.
Did you find that you had any challenges creating that positive environment?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, because we were providing a service. So us as a team, myself, Byron and Wayne, us as a team, we see ourselves as the service providers. They were the beneficiaries. So we adapted to whatever the need was. For example, we'd open up at 6 o'clock in the morning because kids had to be there before they went to school because that was the best for them. It wasn't the best for us because we had to leave about 5 o'clock, but it was the best for the kids. And we'd be there at 8 o'clock at night. We were there to support them, and then when there were times when the things were going really well and be in the background. But in the times where things hadn't gone so well, and they hadn't been selected for a national age group team, or they hadn't been, then we were there to pick up those pieces of support and give that advice. And because sometimes it was they just wanted the opportunity to discuss their disappointments and how do you turn that disappointment into the next challenge? Because we can quickly turn that around into well, that's the next opportunity, and see it as an exciting opportunity, not a negative one.
But as you say, it's how we then turn that into something that's more positive, rather than allowing that to be something that continues to affect our happiness.
Yeah.
The next question that I pose to you both, do you think that professional sport has changed since you were playing?
Yeah, it's definitely changed since I played initially in the early stages of professional rugby in Wales, because we were still in the mindset, we were getting paid as professionals, but we were still in the mindset of the amateur game. Drinking culture was still massive. Weren't probably pretty fully professional, I don't think, until the early 2000s. That's when I think, and then obviously on the back of, coaches like Steve Hansen coming to Wales, and then Warren Gatlin is, boys actually started to realise what professionalism was, and when we started knuckling down, and we formed the academies, and the first sort of members of the academies early would have been people like Sam Ward, Jamie Roberts, them boys. Well, they were brought up in that environment there where they were unbelievable athletes, and that was the biggest change and shift in transition for me. Was we thought we were getting paid professional, we weren't. But then when Sam's sort of era came through, then started pushing through the national side, that we've had success, haven't we? And it's down to good coaching as well and good environments by those coaches. But it's without a doubt a byproduct of where the academy system was at that time.
You're spot on. I think that, but I also think that it has changed. I was a performance lifestyle advisor through UK Sport, doing a bit like we do the VRCs year. So taking their ambitions and goals, understanding individuals' ambitions and goals, and looking out how can we progress those goals and ambitions, and still giving them a career without distracting from one or the other. I'm trying to get that balancing act right. So that was a challenge, because there was it's a cruel world of work and sport when you've done it performance. If performance is the only thing you're measuring, as Byron said earlier, when you measure the contribution as a whole, then they can still have a really successful life, irrespective of what happens in sport. So an injury could finish tomorrow, they could still have an outstanding. We have a number of people that we can mention that have gone on to professional physiotherapists and didn't make it as professional athletes, but went on to professions in other, because we had the balance right. And I think it's exactly the same year. I think if work becomes the only factor in your life and that starts to fail, then you feel like a failure, but it's not the factor in your life. The happiness and contentment is the factor. It's where we're focusing on our efforts and all our dreams.
I think balance is key, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Throughout everything that we do, because if we have a good balance, then we have a sense of self, I guess, purpose.
Yes.
So what tips would you give to young people, or to anyone for that matter, in relation to happiness, whether it's sporting, in the workplace? What tips would you give to others?
Be as grumpy as possible. If you want success.
Thank you, Victor.
No, I certainly wouldn't go along. That's why I'm doing this, is that people learn from my mistakes. And my son's a boxer, and he's competing at an high level and hoping to turn professional in the next couple of months. But I say to him now, is just enjoy every day. Because he's like, oh, he's a world championship start next week. I want to be a world championship. No, let's just enjoy going training today. I train him, we go to the gym together. Let's enjoy the day. I don't know tomorrow when tomorrow comes. So it is like, I know it's a cliche, enjoy the journey, but just enjoy everything you do as much as possible. Because like I said earlier, you're chasing the end goal, the holy grail. I go, it's like chasing the wind, isn't it? You just never catch it. So if you think, like for him, I say, if you think you're going to win a Welsh title, what's that going to make you happy for the rest of your life, is it? Tyson Fury, I'm sure you all know, was the heavyweight champion of the world. You read his book, he, all his life, strived to be a world champion. And he beat Vladimir Klitschko when he was 28 years of age. And he said within 1 hour of that fight ending and him becoming world champion, he sat in the dressing room and he never felt so empty in his life. And he chased that. A world champion, heavyweight champion of the world. Unbelievable. So the message is there, please, young people, just enjoy every day. Enjoy going training, enjoy your parents taking you training, enjoy going with your mates, enjoy being with your mates and your friends, because they're the people who will be there when things go wrong. And they're the people who mean the most to you, when you get a bit older in life like me, that's where you realise the true value is. And if you can get that at a young age, enjoy that journey. Life is a lot better than having to wait to find out till you're in your 40s, like I did, to find out what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think it's the same in work. I think that we have to enjoy the things we're doing. And sometimes we go to work even though we don't even like our job sometimes. So, but we go there because we got to pay the mortgage, we got a car to run, we got all the external things that we think make us feel good. We're not doing it for our own purpose, and I think it's going back to that purpose again. If we're looking at ourselves in a way that's saying, am I really enjoying this? Am I still getting lots out of it? Am I really progressing not progressing at the greasy pole of leadership, but am I progressing as a person? And is it still fulfilling me? And it's brave enough to have those brave conversations with yourself. Courageous conversations, I call them, but they're almost internal courageous conversations.
Absolutely. And it's brave to have those conversations with yourself. And I'm going to bring you back to a point, and I know we made this a while ago, but self-care, you said about being selfish earlier, Byron, when it comes to self-care. But self-care is not selfish, because it's important to look after ourselves, because we are important. We're important as individuals. We're important in the things that we do within our lives, and we have to look after ourselves. It's okay to look after other people as long as we're also looking after ourselves.
Do you know something? I'm talking about this, and I know this is about happiness, but when we look back at our time, as my time as a young coach and then into the academy system, you start off almost trying to emulate the environments you come from, because that conditioned you, like Byron just said. So you set standards and you push people, and it isn't until that learning you almost reflect back, and I know we shouldn't look back, but you do reflect back for your own learning, and your own learning tells you that, that I feel a bit embarrassed because how much I've grown from the person I was then to the person I am now, if that makes sense. So you almost feel a bit embarrassed about that because I was in that place at that time. But I think I think that's about the growth mindset. I think if we have that mindset to develop and get better from an internal perspective, then I think you will get to that place of contentment.
I think so as well. I think that it's easy to look back and think about all of the things that we could have done, and hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? But it's really important for us to be in the moment, and we can learn our lessons from the past. I like to think of it like when you're driving. Yeah. You're in the car, if you're driving along, you can look in the rearview mirror, think about where you've been, but you need to be in the moment, otherwise you'll crash.
Yeah.
Even if you're looking at your future destination, you can't look too far ahead, you can't always look behind, you have to spend time in the moment.
I agree. I don't know whether this will be dubbed out or not, but we used to have a saying in the academy, if one of the kids wasn't achieving what our expectation, we'd refer to him as a softcock because he wasn't achieving our expectation. We didn't know what other things were going on in his life. We had just made that assumption straight away. And I think that's where we were, and we will never do that now. But that's just about our own learning and development.
Because we were conditioned.
Yes. Yeah.
By our previous coaches.
And
Product of your environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we do better when we know better.
Yes, we do.
And if we can help other people to learn some of the lessons that we've learned, then I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
I know when I was younger, I used to strive to achieve, and I tried to do everything I possibly could to achieve the things that I wanted to do in life. And somebody in the office earlier made a joke about some of the random things that I've done in relation to work, because I came into the office today with a couple of things from previous work lives. And we had a little chuckle over it, because I said, yeah, when I was younger, I used to try and do absolutely everything because I never thought I was good enough. And the reality is that, of course, I was good enough, but I just never allowed myself to think that, because from a young age, it was, if you're not trying, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's important to take time and reflect and to know that we can be happy.
I think there is one fundamental law, though, that if there's young people watching, sports people, anything you do in life, there's one universal law. You have to work hard to achieve. That goes without saying, whatever you want to do in life.
We'd often... it was really interesting, because when children went through age grade performance teams, they were often picked, and if you look at performance teams and the data, you will say that the children who were pre-Christmas birthdays always got selected for performance teams at age grade, because they had that physical maturity that the post-Christmas children often lacked. So they got selected, they had better coaches, so they done better, they achieved more. And if you went and looked at an under-15s representative team in any sport, they're mostly pre-Christmas birthdays. And I think that in the post-Christmas birthdays, and those ones who got selected because of size or because of talent, it was the ones that really made it were the ones that had to work hard, the ones that really had to learn about resilience, learn how to work really hard to get to what they want to achieve. And those are the ones that you want to grasp and keep hold of, because those are the ones that will deliver in any form of work or, like you said, sport.
And I think one of the key messages that we need to take away from today is it is important to work hard, and it is important to be kind to ourselves. Absolutely. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Byron. We have really appreciated you coming to talk to us today. Next time we're going to be talking about burnout. Thank you for listening. We've been talking with John and Byron for today, and we hope to see you again. I know that you'll be joining us for future podcasts, so we will look forward to welcoming you back.
Thank you, Chrissie.
Thank you, Chrissie.
Thank you for listening to Case UK's podcast, Just In Case. Please make sure that you subscribe to this podcast in your preferred podcast app. That way you'll never miss a future episode. And be sure to follow us on social media. Check out our website, www.case-uk.co.uk. And don't forget, we're here for you just in case.
Blue sky, sweet and fresh.